Bienvenidas.
Bienvenidas, comadres and
Hola.
friends. Bienvenidas to our February 2020 teleconference podcast. This is Karen Gonzalez of Las Comadres para las Americas Denver Book Club coordinator. We want to remind you that all 2018-19 podcasts are now uploaded to our website. Feel free to download to listen to any of your favorite interviews. Mil gracias to Comadre Dora Abreu for doing this labor of love for us. Our February 2020 teleconference features Comadre Angie Cruz, author of Dominicana, a novel, and Comadre Aimée Medina Carr, author of River of Love, a novel. But first, a bit of history about our book club. Our first book club gathering was in July 2004 in New York at Comadre Maria Farrar's apartment. After a hiatus, it was restarted in March 2007. Comadre Johanna Castillo, at that time national organizer of the book club and former Comadre member, said, "We are launching the book club to promote the work of Latino authors to every book lover, to bring our community to bookstores, and to support our writers. Now more than ever, we need to support our Latino authors. We encourage you to join our local book club in your city. We have clubs in 12 cities. Austin has 3 area book clubs, and if your city doesn't have one, why not help us start one? For more information about our book club, visit our website at latinolit.com. These teleconferences, Reading with Las Comadres, started in 2008. Although we actually started the teleconferences in October of 2006, we are in our 14th year. We created Reading with Las Comadres teleconferences and book club in an effort to entice everyone to read more Latino authors, to learn about Latino roots and different perspectives on Latino cultures and heritage. Our book club and teleconferences are open to all, not just Latinos. We are creating a space for everyone to explore the Latino writer's mind and soul as portrayed through the written word. So invite others to join us. We are very grateful to the publishers, Flatiron Books and Homebound Publications, for their support of this teleconference with gratis books. For more information about the authors and publishers, visit our website at latinolit.com. First, Comadre Angie Cruz will be interviewed by Denver Comadre Sheila Perez Kindle. We'll meet Comadre Aimée Medina Carr, who will be interviewed by Julia Abrantes when we start our conversations with interview. Now let's meet Angie. Angie Cruz's novel, Dominicana, is the inaugural book pick for GMA Book Club and the Word Uptown Read selection for 2019. It also was longlisted for the Andrew Carnegie Award in Excellence in Fiction for 2019. The New York Times Book Review called it lovely and compelling. NBC News said Dominicana is a triumphant return for Cruz. The journey of Ana Canción is one of the most evocative and empowering immigrant stories of our time. It was named most anticipated best book in 2019 by Time, Newsweek, People, Oprah Magazine, The Washington Post, The New York Times, and Esquire. Cruz is the author of 2 other novels, Soledad and Let It Rain Coffee, and the recipient of numerous fellowships and residencies, including the Lighthouse Fellowship, Siena Art Institute, the Pittsburgh of the Arts Grant, and the CUNY Dominican Studies Institute Fellowship. She's published shorter works in the Paris Review, VQR, Callaloo, Gulf Coast, and other journals. She's the founder and editor-in-chief of the award-winning literary journal Asterix. She's an associate professor at the University of Pittsburgh, where she teaches in the MFA program and splits her time between Pittsburgh, New York, and Turin. Website, angiecruz.com, Twitter at @acruzwriter. Our interviewer is Comadre Sheila Perez Kindle. Sheila is a discussion leader for the Denver Network, Las Comadres Book Club. She is a Chicana of indigenous Mexican and Chinese ancestry. She is an aspiring writer born into a large family and raised in Denver, Colorado. Sheila is a former recreational and animal-assisted therapist working for 33 years in a large pediatric unit at Denver Health. During the last 5 years of this tenure, she introduced Nika, a pioneer four-legged canine, to patients and families throughout the hospital who are dealing with a variety of traumatic issues. Nika now accompanies Sheila in her role as a recreation and social program manager for Southwest Improvement Council providing healthy aging activities and options, supporting Native and Chicano elders in the community. Along with reading and writing, she enjoys traveling, boating, camping, hiking, swimming, and golfing. She is married, has 4 children, 1 granddaughter, 2 dogs, and 5 fish. Comadre Sheila, take it away.
Thank you, Karen. And felicidades, Angie. Thank you for spending part of your special day with us.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah. So also congratulations on all the honors, the GMA thing. And gee, gosh, how long before the announcement were you notified about that honor?
I think it was like 5 days or 6 days before it was going to be announced. They don't give you a lot of time, so you don't spread the word.
Yeah. Wow. What an awesome opportunity, though. So many people have the opportunity to see your book, so I'm so happy about that.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah. Angie, would you tell our listeners more about who you are, about your family, about your siblings?
Well, I grew up in New York City in Washington Heights, and I come from a family of Dominican immigrants who immigrated to New York City in the 1970s. I spent most of my childhood traveling back and forth from Dominican Republic to New York City. I often say how, even though Dominican Republic is a plane ride away, it was easier to get there than it was to go downtown New York City for us. So yeah, I feel like I grew up with 2 feet on different places. And yeah, my family, they're working class, and we're one of the first in the building that they moved into. We're one of the first Dominicans. So yeah, I guess a lot of my work is inspired by how their arrival, but also the challenges that immigrants meet when they come to the U.S.
Right. Tell us about your writing style. What is your process? I mean, as far as when you write, do you do it on computer? Do you do it longhand? What is your process?
Writing changes for me. I used to write. I always write on computers. I have terrible handwriting. I haven't written anything by hand in a really, really long time, unless I'm doing writing exercises with my students, because I teach at the University of Pittsburgh in the MFA program. And sometimes I require them to write, and I'll try to write with them so that way I can get some writing in. But usually I write on my computer. And up until I became a mother, which was 12 years ago, I had all kinds of rituals where I would get up, make tea, put on some music, put on some incense. And I had all these little things that I needed to do before I started writing. But once I had a child, that had to go away because I had no time. And in some ways, motherhood kind of forced me into a writing mode where whenever I had free time, I would just snatch it and just make it happen. I mean, the book I'm working on now that is coming out in 2021, hopefully, if I can finish it, I started writing it on my phone on the subway. I would be taking the subway and it would get stuck, and the commute from where I lived to most of the places I would have to go to were 45 minutes. And I would carry my phone. I was like, okay, if I'm going to take these long commutes, I might as well use my time to work on a book. And I ended up writing a lot of it on the phone. So I guess I'm someone who writes anytime I have dead time. I'll write on my phone or on my computer, when I'm flying, when I'm taking trains. Yeah.
Yeah, super. That's great. That's good to know. Now, the story, Dominicana, was written without quotation. Some commenters shared that they enjoyed that style. Can you speak to that? As there's so many different things going on when I read it, and I wonder about the editor. Did they have trouble with that type of writing, or did you ever have any pushback about that?
Well, I didn't realize. I've never actually used them in my text. And one of the things is that all the characters are speaking in Spanish, most of the time in the book. So in Spanish, we don't use quotations, right? So I wanted the text to look like books written in Spanish, even though I write in English. But also, I feel like sometimes like when you see something said, it sort of creates a hierarchy between what is said and what is thought and what is happening. And by not using it, like I feel like there's like a seamlessness between those, like the thought and the expression. Yeah. And I also think like because so many things that women experience are often not said, I just thought like, oh, I don't want to sort of single out what's being said. I want everything to be kind of read with the same kind of, weight.
Huh, okay.
As far as pushback, so I did discover after, that if you want your book to go in the mainstream, a lot of mainstream readers are like what we call like, readers who read genre, they prefer quotations and they won't read it because it doesn't have them, right? So I would never have made a different choice because for me that choice is connected to art making and my aesthetic. But I do now understand like how certain readers have certain expectations. Yeah.
Yeah. There's so many great stories within the chapters and episodes of the story. Was that intentional? I mean, there's so much in the book. It's just really a great read. It just keeps you going, keeps you on, just keeps you wanting to read page after page. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Do you mean like the little sections around animals and things like that?
Well, yeah,
like
there's
those
the stories within the chapters and there's just episodes within there that are really a story within themselves.
Well, I've been paying attention I feel like I was trained to write with my grandmother telling her stories in the kitchen. My grandmother, is not, didn't go very far in school. So, she's not a reader or writer, but she's an amazing storyteller. And I feel like my first teacher was her telling stories. And one of the things that I've noticed while she's telling story and how she holds people's attention is that there will be a story inside a story, right? And like she's like you ask her a question like, well, how did you meet, how did you fall in love when you met, grandfather, like abuelo? And she'll start telling the story, but to get to the answer, she'll tell 500 stories in between about everything else. And I realized, oh, wait, she's trying to hold me she's trying to keep me in the house. Like she doesn't want me to leave. So she's not going to give me what I want, right? But at the same time, there's all these great stories. And I feel like that storytelling kind of style is something that I learned and have used in my work. And I don't think I was this conscious of it a long time ago. But now that I'm like really paying attention and I guess I'm more confident, right? I think that oral storytelling, although it's like such a gift that was given to me and a lot of, Latinx writers, it's sometimes deemed as anti-intellectual, when in reality, that's actually our gift, that we have this ability and this ear for story. So now I talk about it explicitly because I feel like, especially when I meet students who come from storytelling cultures or they have that kind of relationship with the family members, I say to them, you have something, use it. Like, don't hide the fact that your teachers were these people who were telling you these stories.
Uh-huh. You mentioned your grandma being a big influencer. Who are some of your other influencers?
I think I've had so many. Definitely, like, the first thing I did before I became a writer was study visual arts in high school. So I feel like I had, like, seeing art, going to museums, provided me access to re-seeing the world in all these different ways that really impacted my work. So a lot of people will say, wow, your work is really visual. And I say, oh, that makes sense, because for the first 10 years of my education, I was painting. In fact, for my first book, I painted a lot. So I think painting, visual art, the Metropolitan Museum of Art, where I interned as a high school student for 2 years, big influence on my life. I later reading, slave narratives, Toni Morrison, Latinx writers like Cristina Garcia. When I read them in the 90s, like they opened my mind up to seeing myself as a writer. So yeah.
Great. Yeah. So how did you select the title of the book, Dominicana?
Titles are very hard. It's not like they come, like it took a lot of work to figure out. Like I had a million other titles and none of them spoke to me. And I was I had a dinner at my house and I was talking to two other writers and they were like, well, what is your book about? And I said, well, it's about this Dominicana. And they said, hey, Dominicana has the name Ana inside of it. And it occurred, I was like, oh my God, yeah, Ana inside of Dominicana. So I was really, I thought, okay, let me play with the name Dominicana. And also there's a doll, a souvenir doll that plays a really important part of the book, which is called the Dominicana, and it's a doll without a face. So I thought, okay, this could actually work. But for me, like the title, what I realized once I chose Dominicana, and I thought, okay, this is going to work, is that I wanted a title that the readers I feel need the book would find the book. Like I thought, like the first Dominican writer I read was Julia Alvarez, When the Garcia Girls Lost Their Accent. And it was the first book I bought, and I was walking by the bookstore, and through the window I saw that title, When the Garcia Girls Lost Their Accent, Julia Alvarez. And I was like, oh my God, what could this be about? It signaled to me as a young person, and I understood to buy the book. And I think like Dominicana has done the same thing. Like there's been a lot of people in my community, for example, here in New York, who have seen, someone read it and they'll say, oh my God, I was reading the book, and someone immediately was like, I want to buy that book, because they're like, is this about Dominican? I'm Dominican, or, is this about an immigrant? Like they immediately know that it's a story that they want to connect to. So in some ways the title is like a signal. It's like, hey, look, this book is for you. Like find it in the library, borrow it from your friends.
Yes. Awesome. Now the doll gets broken within the story, the Dominicana doll. Mm-hmm. Was that symbolic? Was that like intentional and symbolic of her life, of Ana's life?
I don't often when I'm writing think about symbols. I kind of think about character action and then things happen. But what you asking that question, it makes me think like in some ways something she was holding on to, like the Dominicana was a keeper of secrets, right? So breaking this thing that holds the secrets also is like a new phase in her life, maybe. So yeah, I guess like it's about representing a rebirth or like starting a new phase.
Good. Okay, that's exactly what I thought, and the discussion was about. Yes. Now, another specific question was regarding Alta Gracia, and the question is, are you Alta Gracia?
No. Yeah. Well, yeah. I guess so. That's true. I probably am.
Okay.
I guess
now,
so. Yeah.
Good. In the story, Ana becomes very efficient. At first, she seems to be a prisoner, and then she blossoms and is resilient with her experiences and sacrifices. She appears to grow up right before our eyes as an empowered, and it's just a great story. I want to talk about that. I just think that you talk about women being empowered, and I think that that's an important thing that women have to recognize, and sometimes over years they don't.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I mean, yeah, what were you going to ask?
No, I'm just saying that in this story she does. She's very empowered.
Well, I think that it's, I I think that especially for women who feel trapped by a relationship or find themselves in a situation of domestic violence or know women like that and they don't know how to talk about it, I feel like this book has been really useful because there's I receive a lot of letters from women who have bought the book for people to have a conversation about things that they have not been able to talk about, right? And that,
Right.
like, to show a character like Anna, who's 15 years old, and, and it's only a year, but the fact that she still dreams and she still allows herself to fall for someone and she still wants to study, even if she's in this really difficult situation, I think is really inspiring because feeling trapped sucks, So I think that, I'm glad that it reads that way, and I was hoping that it would read that way. I think it's sometimes hard to read about someone who's going through such a typical situation. But I also wanted to show that even if you're in a difficult situation, it doesn't mean that you didn't stop dreaming or you're not trying to get out.
Yeah. Mhm. And I think it's fortunate too that you talk about domestic violence in there. But one of the other things that you talked about in the story was about colorism and how people continue to draw distinctions regarding skin color with other ethnicities, but sometimes within their own families.
Yeah, I mean that, I just came back from the Dominican Republic and someone was talking about how painful it is when, a child is born in the same family and already they're mistreated or not prioritized because they're darker skinned, and even and to think that we live in a culture which really is based on lack of education, right? So these regimes and and the capital of whiteness has made it like so people think that behavior is okay, and it isn't. And I wanted to show that in the book, and I think that's the thing that fiction can do. That's again, it's easier to put it in a story where you can look at these characters and move in the world with them. And then you're having a conversation with the book and you either are like, I know exactly what it feels like to be Cesar, who's dark skinned, or I know exactly what it's like to be Juan, who says problematic things about African Americans, and oh my God, it makes me look so bad. Maybe I should think twice, before I say those things. It's that you can have like this intimate conversation with characters in a way that you can't with someone in the world, right? That's why for me, like when I think about what fiction can do to help change some of the ways we're behaving, and to understand that we're implicated in the bad behavior,
Yes. Yeah. One of the other things we talked about too is how Anna's mother is a strong. She kind of forces the situation. Of course, they're struggling and without food to eat and all that different ideas. But there wasn't much input from the father. Tell me about that. Was that intentional to leave him kind of not in the background necessarily, but not as forward as the mother?
For who not to be as forward?
There was not much about the father being, any great influence in her life. The questions he asked, was she okay? And he told her he wanted her to be happy, but there wasn't much more about or from him.
Right. So, I mean, like in when I think about that, I think that in some ways, like the man that Anna's made to marry is like, has so much power and control, but I also wanted to show how some women have power and control too, right? So like the mother figure sort of pushing her idea of what's best on her daughter is another way that she's also trapped, right? Like, so I wanted to show kind of a balance. And I feel like with the men, I wanted to show different ways men operate in the world, in the same way that I wanted to show how the women operate differently, right? So the Sister Teresa does something completely opposite to Anna. So all of them represent maybe like different parts of the community.
Sheila, your final question, please.
You've mentioned a little bit about what you're working on now, but can you give advice to aspiring writers or authors, Angie?
Yeah, I mean, I think that what I say to writers is not to give up. It took me 14 years for this book to come out in the world. It had been rejected for 3, maybe 4 years from almost every editor in publishing, where people would read the book and say, it's beautiful, but it's too sad, and there's no market for this book, and, I wish it had a happier ending, and, and I feel like a lot of writers I know, they see the book published and they think that somehow it happens overnight, and it doesn't. It takes a lot of time. And the secret for me was always to continue writing. So when that book was going around and it was being rejected, I just started working on a new book. And, was hopeful that somebody was going to read this book, Dominicana, and fall in love with it. And someone did. So the work of the writer is to keep writing and to get better at your craft and to love the writing. And then the other aspect of writing, which is like the publicity and the book, and it feels like a big party, is really just a tiny part of your career. So you can't focus on that. You really have to focus on making beautiful work and building a community of writers and support.
Yes. We really hope that there's going to be a sequel to this story. We want to know what happens to the characters in an older age, and also how the other children are coming into the world. But I know that I'm on my last time with you, and I really wanted to thank you for spending time with us and wish you a happy birthday and tell you that
thank you so much.
we're very proud of you, and que viva Angie Cruz.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Karen?
Yes, now it is my pleasure to introduce you to Comadres Aimée Medina Carr and Comadre Julia Abrantes. Aimée Medina Carr is a fifth-generation indigenous Southern Colorado native who lives in Northern California in the foothills of the Sierra Nevada mountains with her husband, 2 grown sons, 2 cats, and a Labradoodle. She worked for 10 years as a filmmaker. Her debut novel, River of Love, received honorable mention for the Landmark Prize for Fiction Award given by Homebound Publications in 2018. Indigenous peoples have survived by storytelling, a form of resistance. We're the ancestors of an age to come a collective spirit through the centuries that work to make a difference. Every generation has to move the boulder of good forward. If we don't tell our stories, who will? Author webpage, www.aimedinacarr.com, AimieMedinaCarr.com. Twitter.com/AIMEECAROL. Madre Julia is a stalwart of Las Comadres who for many years nourished our New York City comadrazos with love and passion. She is an avid reader and attends all the book conferences possible to learn about books by Latinx authors, to share this info with our comadres, compadres, and friends. Julia and Edgar now live in Loganville, Georgia. Comadre Julia, take it away.
Thank you so much, Karen. Good evening, Aimée.
Hola.
Hola. So nice to have you here. So, River of Love. Let's talk a little bit about the book. Can you tell those listening in a little bit about the book?
Well, thank you. First of all, thank you so much for having me, Julia. I really, really appreciate it. Mm-hmm. I'm such a huge fan of both Las Comadres Book Club, and this is an honor. River of Love is a supernatural love story about a fierce Chicana girl growing up in a white Colorado town during a youth-led cultural revolution of the 1970s. It's a love letter to the Southern Rocky Mountains, to the spirits, and to a close-knit family, and to youth itself. Mm-hmm. This was an enchanted time, a precious time overshadowed by the 1960s. a mind-blowing era of change before the digital revolutionary madness, a cosmic coming-of-age journey, and this all takes place during like the civil rights movement and the Indian Black Power and Chicano movements, feminist movement, anti-Vietnam War movement.
Mm-hmm.
That was an exciting time.
Absolutely. Okay, so I'm going to ask a little bit about some of the characters here.
Okay.
This book was just very real to me as someone who's attending her 40th high school reunion this summer. So I identified. I didn't grow up in the mountains. I grew up in the projects in Brooklyn, but I identified with a lot of the things that, seeing them go as they wove through life. So Rose Ramirez is the lead character here in the book, and let's talk about Rose and the family culture, because she fell in love with someone who the family maybe wasn't 100%, embracing as when she fell in love with him.
Well, Rose was from a very strict traditional Catholic family, and no one would have ever been good enough for Rose. her dad, her mother and father adored her, and she was the little princess, third child of four, and she was the one big hope, big hope for the family to go to college and to have a creative life and do something, something really big with her life. And so in high school, she falls in love with a white boy from a private parochial school in the outskirts of town, and she doesn't tell her parents that she's dating this white boy because she knows that they would have a fit and ground her and lock her up in a room and wouldn't let her would watch her closely. So she keeps it a secret, and she feels really, really torn about that because she's a good Catholic girl and she doesn't want to go against her parents, and she felt just huge amounts of guilt. But on the other hand, it was really fun, and it was a whole new experience because it was, her first love, and so that kind of explains how Rose is a character.
Mhm. And I love her abuela, her grandma Eugenia, and how she's also an important part of her life.
Of course, her mother and her grandmother were her biggest influences in her life and in her spiritual life. At a very young age. I write about them taking her to mass, and both of them the rosary, and then the grandmother praying so hard for Rose is in her late 20s, and she still haven't settled down and found a husband, and her grandmother really prayed fiercely for the right man because she knew Rose was a special woman who didn't want to get married, get divorced, and not that kind of life. She wanted her to find a true love and stay married, and she did. She found her a diamond in the pile of rocks that she'd been dating, and it worked out great for her. Thanks to Grandma.
Thanks to Grandma. We love grandmas for those reasons, and many more.
Yeah.
One of our readers wanted to ask that there were quotes in the book from Rodolfo Corky Gonzalez, and they wanted to know if those quotes were a charge to present-day activism.
Well, one of the main reasons I wrote this book was because I was part of this youth-led cultural, revolution that we are still now reaping the benefits from. I really wanted young people. I mean, you and I and the baby boomers, we know, we lived through it, so we know how hard fought we had to, had to be involved to get all the benefits that we all now take for granted. And one of the reasons why I wanted to write this book is for the younger generation to realize that it wasn't always this great. We weren't always, we had to fight hard for the feminist movement, had to fight hard for a lot. Women couldn't get credit cards, back in the late 1960s because, they just didn't give them out. They gave them to men, but not to women. I mean, there's a lot of things that we had to fight hard for, and I just wanted to emphasize that. And plus, we're starting to lose a lot of those rights, so we have to keep fighting. And it is a call to action, and it is a call to be involved. And I support all my. I have many friends in the Sacramento. Adelita Serena is one of my best friends, and she's a real activist, and she works with the mothers, and she's an indigenous dancer. She dances for an Indian group, and I support her. We just marched in the women's in the march in Sacramento just recently, and it was exciting and thrilling, and it felt like the 60s all over again, and we have to keep doing it. We have to keep doing it because we just got to move the boulder forward, of the good forward.
Absolutely. I loved how in the book you titled the chapters, and then there was a little quote, whether it be a biblical quote or a quote from literature or from a song or, different proverbs in different places. How did you put the story together and then come up with that for each of the chapters?
Writing a book is so mysterious, and I would write the chapters would come, and then I would be on, Twitter or Facebook or reading in a book, and I would come across these quotes, and I would just jot them down, and if I had to just initially fall in love with a quote, and then I'd write it down, and then it would just magically, be perfect for the beginning of a chapter. And that's just, it's like a puzzle. When you're writing a book, it's like you're putting pieces of like a quilt. You're putting pieces of a quilt together, and it's really fun it's really magical when it works out like that. I'm glad you enjoyed those epigraphs. They're called epigraphs.
Absolutely. I mean, and it's something. Being such an avid reader myself, and you see the different writing styles, or how the authors present their works to us, the readers. It's a beautiful thing. And I know Angie just said that her book Dominicana she was working on it for many years. How long did it take you before you completed River of Love to what we see now?
Well, I stopped and started River of Love for probably, I had two small sons, it was like Angie was saying, it's so impossible. It's really hard to concentrate and to stay disciplined when you're trying to write a book. And now that my boys are grown and one's already graduated from college and married, and the baby's graduating in May from college, so it's a lot easier now to write than it was back in those days. But I stopped and started probably 10 different times, and then my wonderful cousin Juliana Aragon Fertula, who's a published poet, check her out on Amazon. She flew out from Colorado, and we went up to Dillon's Beach for a 2-week writing workshop, and she helped me get my first. She helped me in this writing workshop get the first 50 pages of my book, and that was just the jump start I needed, and I can't thank her enough. And I call her, she's in my acknowledgments, and I call her my North Star because she really truly is. And we all need help like that. We all need comadres like you. We all need boost and help and cheerleaders and promoters. And I'd also like to give a shout out to my publisher, Leslie Browning of Homebound Publications. I would not have a book without that wonderful woman. She, I sent it to probably 100 publishers.
Wow.
It took me 6 years to write after we went to Dillon's Beach, and it took me another year to find a publisher. And I tell you, it's a very heartbreaking experience to spend all that time on 334 pages of love, and then you can't get it published, you know. But Leslie helped me. She designed the cover. She helped me edit it. She's helped in every step of the way, and I can't thank her enough.
Yeah, well, we can't thank her either, and I love this cover. I think
isn't the cover the coolest?
I love the cover. I think it's really, really cool.
Those are my favorite colors, those two colors.
Yeah, no, it's really nice. It's really, really nice. Okay, let's see. This book is a love letter to the Southern Rocky Mountains, to spirits, to family and youth. And how did you pull that all together to put this story out there and share all these loves of yours with us?
Well, like I said, I stopped and I had many starts, and then I get to like 100 pages and I just run out of things to write about. And then I finally realized that I had to just incorporate all the movements and all the magical, mind-blowing overshadowing of growing up in the 1960s. There was so much. Oh, and then of course the music. I bet you really enjoyed the music.
Mm-hmm.
We were so fortunate to be born during the rock's golden era, and it was the soundtrack of our lives, and it just spurred us to do so many creative things. And of course, my cousin and I, we wrote poetry, and we wrote, we sang songs, and we danced, and it was a very creative time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was. It truly was. I'm glad that I made it through it all. So one of our readers asked, "Is this book based on your life?"
Well, I like to quote the writer Mary McCarthy, and she says, "What I do is take real plums and put them in imaginary cake."
Okay.
and doesn't it taste good the second time around?
Yeah.
And of course, I wanted to relive. It was, I really, a lot of me wanted to relive those fun high school years, and what better way than to write a novel about it, right?
Oh, absolutely. But if I wrote one about my high school years, I'd probably have to kill a few people. So just leave it.
Well, I don't want to be 16 again, but
no,
it is fun to write about it.
Exactly. And I know. I've been fortunate where I've been able to go back to my high school reunions, every 5 years, and it's great seeing and just picking right up with some people. Like you just left school yesterday, and 20, 30 years have passed.
That's wonderful.
The friendships and the love that was there back then is here now, and it's a beautiful thing.
It never goes away, does it?
Never does.
Once you've had a close relationship with someone, it just takes just reconnecting with them, and that's that's one of my themes in my book is it's about connection. It's all about love and connection, and at all costs, stay connected.
Absolutely. So now that you are a published author, how has your life changed?
Well, just like my character Rose in my book, I've learned to trust the benevolent universe. And also not to push the river. In my 30s and 40s, I was just so controlling and such a pushy broad. And I've learned to relax and just let things flow naturally. So much pain and suffering is caused by trying to be in control all the time.
Mm-hmm. Very good. And what are you working on now?
Oh, I'm working on a couple of things, and it's been so hard because I've been really trying to promote this book, so it's hard to be disciplined and get my butt in the chair every day. But I'm working on a book of essays, and I've also been working on some short stories, and that's kind of what's on the docket right now.
Awesome. Very good.
Oh, and I am going to eventually, I'm trying to adapt River of Love into a screenplay so I can sell it to possibly Hollywood or Netflix, one or the other, or Amazon.
It was very vivid.
Visual,
the sceneries, the scenes were very vivid, and I could see myself in the different spots and places, and
awesome.
I can almost smell the scents, if you would, of the different places in the book. So that's a great sign, and hopefully we will see River of Love somewhere on the small or big screen someday soon.
Oh, that was from your mouth to God's ears.
Well, thank you so much, Madre Aimée, for joining us tonight.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure and a joy. Thank you.
Awesome. Karen?
Comadres, Angie, Aimée, Sheila, and Julia, we are so grateful for the insightful interviews and for spending time with us this evening. We enjoyed the sharing of perspectives and insights from your work and your life. We treasure the opportunity to learn more about you and about your work, and we feel more connected to you. We thank publishers Flatiron and Homebound for their support of this teleconference and for their generous gift of books for winners of early registration. We thank our audience for taking the time to join us for this teleconference, and thank you for those that submitted questions. And we'd like to thank Comadres Maria Ferrar for the media coordination and the Twitter chats, and to Comadre Dora Abreu for the web work she does for us. Without this volunteer leadership team, this book club and all the associated work would not happen. Mil gracias. Please remember to carry the books you are reading and always displaying the title, and shamelessly advertise what you are reading. Buy books to support our authors, and if your library does not have a book you want to read, ask them to order it. And please attend your local book club meetings and bring a friend or two. Remember, it's open to everyone, men and women, and not just Latinos. Our March 2020 teleconference is Monday, March 30th. Our book of the month is Oaxaca, Home Cooking from the Heart of Mexico by Laura Lopez and Javier Cabral, published by Harry N. Abrams. We will not have a conversations with book because we are going to ask you to cook a Oaxacan dish and send in comments and questions to have the authors respond to. Invite friends to try their hand at other recipes and enjoy a Oaxacan fiesta. Look for the teleconference registration announcement coming soon. We'll be making a change from Yahoo Groups to groups.io to continue our email distribution list. You will receive a message about this change shortly. Mil gracias to all y buenas noches.
Buenas noches.